As the title says, we're going to be looking at the differences of a Philips era Marantz PM7000 and a 70's Super Scope era Marantz. I actually wasn't expecting it to be like this crazy of a difference. I mean, I was fully expecting it to be kind of what I was expecting it to be. Was the newer one was going to have like way more detail and more power. What I got was a lot different. A lot different. So the newer one is supposed to have like less total harmonic distortion for whatever that's worth. And the older one, I think it's like 0.02 or something. I don't know the exact specs. The older one is like 0.2, so it's like way more total harmonic distortion on the amplifier, whether you care about that or not. For me, if this little listening test I did kind of dispels that for what it's worth. The way I tested these with my usual Polk Monitor 10Bs. Yeah, I know they're not super high end, but they're basically, I know these speakers. I listen to them for hours. I've listened to them for hours and many pieces of gear, so I'm real familiar with the way they sound. So I use those with my Saga 2 and my SMSL DAC and the Weem Pro streaming title. Different genres. Right away, I want to let you know that with the vintage one, I have no loudness, so I didn't have the loudness on. I had everything at noon on both of the amplifiers. Well, the 2235B is a receiver, and the PM7000 is an integrated amplifier. Okay, I'm sure you know that already. Yeah, so there's that difference. I didn't have the loudness on the old one. The new one, I don't think there is a loudness button. When I did my testing and I was listening to different songs, I noticed the vintage one, it had like a sound to it, like it had a voicing to it that was done on purpose. It was a specific sound that they made it sound that way. It wasn't something like they weren't going for, let's just try to put something out that actually just amplifies. You know, they're actually like giving a little bit of, it's like an art form of creating a product that gives a different character when you're actually listening to something. That's the impression that I got for what it's worth. And that when people talk about the 70's Marantz house sound, 100% that's what it is. That's what I hear with that. It's very refined, very, very dialed in. It's very refined. It is what it is, and it is great. It is great. I will say that one of the biggest things that I noticed between these two units, well, there's several things, but one of the things that I noticed was like the mid-range on the older one. There's more mid-range. I feel more frequencies are there. Definitely has more of a complex mid-range. Snare hits sound just huge. Guitars sound great. Everything has like more. It's weird because when you're listening to it, it's like when it's pushing a signal, it's like it's bouncy. It's the way it's making the speakers react. The amplifier is making the speakers react. It's like a bouncy. It's hard to explain, but it's just got this lively sound to it. Compared to the 2235B, it's just lifeless. It doesn't have like as much life to the sound. It sounds more neutral. Definitely doesn't have any character. Like they were going out of their way to make sure it didn't have character. The complete opposite of the 2235B. At the same time, I feel like it's, for some reason, I feel like it was less accurate. Like I think the accuracy was more on the 2235B because of what they put into actually refining the sound that it puts out. The new one is more inoffensive, I think, whatever, you know, for what it's worth. You're not going to have too much bass. You're not going to have too much treble. You're not going to have too much mid-range. It's kind of like, it's clear. I will say that the new one is clear, not that the old one isn't clear, but the black one is also, or the newer one is also clear in its own way. but subdued at the same time. Like the older one has like this airy presence. It's almost like the music is like just everywhere through the same speakers, everything. And I even tried turning the older one down to compensate. I'm like, man, this is crazy. Even with the new one cranked up, there was less spatial cues. Like the older one had more spatial cues at a lower volume, which is, I didn't realize that amplifiers, I mean, I kind of knew that, but I've never really actually sat down and like A/B something like this. Dynamic range was less. I mean, I guess that kind of goes along with the spatial cues. As far as like what songs I heard a lot of them. The song that really stood out in terms of like how different it was when I put on Dire Straits' Money for Nothing. It sounded lo-fi in comparison. Just couldn't get that same effect where the intro where it gets real quiet and it comes up and the drums, like just the old one just sounds so explosive and lively, and the PM7000 was just kind of like, it was just kind of there. I couldn't get that effect. I tried cranking it up louder. It was just such a stark difference. I mean, like I said, I wasn't expecting it to be that bad, because initially when I got this PM7000, I thought it sounded okay. I was like, oh yeah, that sounds okay. The PM7000 is more akin, in my opinion, to like an appliance. It just kind of does a job. They didn't put a whole lot of effort into it. And the 2235B is more of an experience. Like they actually tried they put effort into this product that they released back in the 70s. There's a few other things that I want to note too in terms of like the way that it's constructed, and I have some videos depicting the differences of how they're constructed. The PM7000 is what came after the PM68, which is also Philips era Marantz, and they look very, very similar. So I looked up some pictures of the PM68 gut shot of the PM68 and the PM7000, and they look really, really close. The heat sinks are the same. The boards are the same. And as a matter of fact, the Marantz PM7000 main power board actually has PM78 written on it. So I don't know if it's the same exact board. I mean, if that tells you anything.
It's pretty interesting on this one. The board actually says PM68. Let's see, zoom in, not zoom, but focus. PM68. It's upside down, but it says PM68, which is the model that predates this PM7000 here. So that's interesting. I wonder if that's just like a straight swap. They just use the same board. To me, this is kind of like laid out like so. If I were to flip this over and take the grab my pen, I dropped it. Take the underneath apart and show you what it looks like underneath. It's so beautifully laid out. Whereas this one is kind of just like, I just kind of laid over the board. They just kind of zip tie it over here. On this one, it's not that way. It's very neatly put. I'm not gonna take the bottom off of it, but you can Google the image and show you what that looks like. But
yeah, they're just different. You know, I know the difference may if I match like the wattage. I mean, this is a 35 watt vintage Marantz versus a 100 watt or 80 watt, whatever it is. Supposed to be a lot more wattage on the newer one. If I were to actually take one of the higher wattage Marantz and compare it against the PM7000, it would be even more of a brutal beatdown. I mean, like if I got a 2270 or a 2275, it would be. I mean, I wouldn't. There's no comparison. Anybody that says that newer is better right away, they haven't sat down and spent the time like I just did today, spending a few hours comparing the two. I don't think that it did the original Saul. I think his name was Saul Marantz, the guy that originally started the company. It's not doing him any favors. I'm sure maybe the newer stuff is better. I don't know. The vintage one, the Super Scope, a lot of people like in the hi-fi, audiophile, audio karma, some people actually dog on the vintage stuff, and I don't know why, because it's amazing stuff. Sounds amazing. That being said, yeah, I guess that's about wraps it up here.